Yeehaw! Oh, I love that sound. It never ever gets old. Never ever gets old. This is the factory Ford F-150 transmission cooler, and it came on all F-150s. Mine's a 2012, but this series ran from 2010 to 2014. And this transmission cooler is okay. If you are not planning on really towing anything that weighs very much, or you're not planning to ever fill the bed up with gravel or lumber or something like that, or you're not planning to drive real fast through the desert, this cooler's probably fine. If you're just daily driving the truck to and from work and you don't really do anything with it except buy some flowers at Home Depot, you're probably just fine with this cooler. But if you are planning to do some of those things or use the truck as a truck, this cooler kind of leaves something to be desired. And what results is that your transmission can get very, very hot. And that, of course, that breaks down the fluid. Now, my truck and a lot of other F-150s have a transmission temperature gauge, and it's kind of in the dash panel. You have to look for it in the computer, but when you find it, you can find your transmission running really hot. And I've found mine running as high as about 218 degrees this summer, and that to me is too hot. Of course, once the fluid breaks down, then it no longer does its job as far as lubricating and all that kind of stuff that it has to do inside the transmission. So you definitely want to nip this problem right in the bud. And what we're going to do is we're going to do an easy upgrade. And you'll see that this mount right here, this mount is a whole lot bigger than it needs to be, right? Well, that's because Ford only wanted to make one set of transmission cooler mounts, because they use that same mount on the F-250s and 350s, and they just use a bigger cooler. So let's check out the big cooler that just came, which is right here in this box. So when you go to the dealer, you're going to order this part number right here, DL3Z7A095B. If you order 095A, you get that. If you order the B, you get this. And let's just unbox this bad boy real fast, and I'll show you the difference in these two coolers. This ran me about 130 bucks too, by the way. So it's a low dollar upgrade, but as you can kind of see, it's a significant upgrade. In fact, this new cooler, I'll just put it right here, this new cooler is twice the size of the old cooler, and it just clips right in. The only thing that we're going to do, the only thing we really have to do, is we've got to trim a couple inches off of this hose right here so that it'll fit on there, and then we've just got to use a small funnel and fill this cooler up with some fluid so that we aren't taking fluid out of this system when we remove this cooler and then not replacing it. Right, so we want to make sure that our system's full of fluid. So I'm going to go get myself a plastic bucket to put right here, and a couple of tools and a couple of clamps, and I will be right back, and we'll get this done. Okay, so here's the gear that I need to change out my transmission cooler. I've got a little tiny funnel here that I stole out of the kitchen. I got two good stainless worm clamps, nut driver to drive the clamps with, just a pair of shop snips, pair of pliers to get the old clamps off with, and I got a quart of transmission fluid. So that's what we need. So let's get this sucker on a tripod, and we will show you how to get her done. So the first thing I'm going to do, and I got my paint can down here, first thing I'm going to do is get this guy loose, and I'm going to get this clamp here moved up off of the cooler. I'd have better pliers if I had more money, but I'm a working guy and I get my money the hard way, so not everything I own is top of the line. There we go, there's that. So we're gonna go ahead and disconnect, get this bad boy loose. These lines have been on here for a little while, so they might be a little tough. There we go. Really don't want to make too much of a mess. Come on. There we are. And I can see the fluid down in there. My fluid's already turning brown. This is from that heat. I know that change of color in transmission fluid isn't supposed to be that big of a deal, but I don't like it. I had my transmission fluid on this truck changed at 60,000 miles, and the dealer raised a stink about it. He made out like I was some kind of an idiot, and this transmission was supposed to be like a, he told me it was some kind of sealed unit and it never needs to be changed. And you know, those people that tell you that stuff are full of shit. And they tell you that you don't need to service your transmission, but by God, when your transmission goes south, they'll be real happy to sell you a new one for $6,000, $7,000, $8,000. So don't ever believe that kind of talk when you hear it from them. So now we're going to get this bottom hose off. I'm trying to do this without spilling, because this cooler is full of fluid. One of the next mods that I do to this truck is going to be to install a transmission pan, and there's a couple out there that I like. The biggest thing is that it needs to have a drain plug, and it needs to hold extra capacity fluid. Come on, you. Man, that bad boy was on there. And there we go. Okay, we still got a little bit of pink left on our fluid. It's not too terrible. I'm not real happy about that. So let's just get this out of here. We can put this to the side. We'll just let this drain out. So now our new cooler goes in the exact same way, right? So what we need to do is take these plugs off of here, and we've got to get our new clamp, because we're replacing these clamps, remember? So we're going to take this clamp off. New clamp goes on, and I want it to face out. Yeah, I want it to face outboard, screwed away from the cooler core. So we'll put our new cooler in. There's that. Clamp's going to go on there nice and easy. We've got to bring this back up. There's a small little plug right here that goes into this little hole. And that's what's going to hold our... Actually, I'm going to put this in first and then do that. So there, we're into that side of the mount. Oop, a little too high. Bring it down. Here we are. Come on. I'm not a professional mechanic by any stretch. So if I'm doing this mod, that must mean it ain't too tough. Okay, that goes in there. And now we've got our side over here ready to go. Take this guy off. And we need to measure this up and then make a cut. So we know that our bottom, we can pop this in temporarily. Our bottom's going to sit right there. So we've got about this much, too much hose, because we want the hose to have a nice, we want it to have a nice bend to it, nice even flow. So our cut is going to be about right here. And we're just going to take that hose right off. There we go. Along with that, this old clamp is going to come off and the new clamp is going to go on. But remember, we still need to put some fluid back in this cooler. So before we do that, we're going to take our hose clamp over here and tighten it up. Our little nut driver we got. There we go. That's pretty snug. Going to get our second clamp on, and I want this clamp to sit outside of the cooler again. So we'll just put that right there for now. We're going to swing the cooler out of the mount. Put our hijacked little kitchen funnel in there. I hope it fits actually. I may have to whittle this thing down to make it fit in that hole. But we'll see. We'll see if we can get some in there. From what I read, it takes about 3/4 of a quart to fill this cooler up. So, here we go. I'm going to just hold that right on there. And we're going to add some fluid. We're not going to race it. I don't just want a bunch of fluid all over the ground here. You never know what kind of little neighborhood critters will come around and be licking on it. There it goes. It's filling up in there. We do not have 3/4 of a quart. It's just kind of not wanting to go in. I'm thinking maybe we got a little vacuum issue here. Come on, down you go. Oh, a little spillage. So we are gonna throw our little paper, just have a little paper towel under here to kind of catch anything. You might need to actually hold the cooler up while you do this so that the fluid will run downhill. Yeah, it's looking pretty full in there. I don't know about 3/4 of a quart. That may not be the right number. So we're going to take and wipe up real quick again. This is kind of a messy little procedure. And then we're going to cap this sucker back up. Cap it up. Our hose is going to go on just like so. Just like how we took it off. Put her down there to the bottom. That clamp rolls. First, however, I'm going to just click that sucker right in there. There's our new cooler. We're going to tighten up our worm clamp. There we are. And that is really, aside from cleanup, about the end of this mod. Now later on, I'm going to heat this motor up and I'm going to climb under there and check my transmission fluid level just to make sure, but I've got a feeling that everything's going to be okay. That's what you do right there. And this is a popular mod, easy to do, very low effort, low stress, low cost, and this will keep your truck from overheating. whether you're running fast, carrying a lot of weight, whatever it is you're doing, towing. Big coolers, remember this, big coolers are good. Big coolers rock. So we'll check back here in a little bit and see what happens. So we just drove this sucker to the car wash and back. I blew all the stuff off of here and fluid that I leaked because I want to see if this thing's leaking. And it's not. It's not. There's just a little water left in there from the car wash. So the last thing to do is going to be to take this sucker out and run it 100 miles an hour. Final tip. But right now we are running way lower temps than we were. So we will be back in just a minute. All right, everybody. We are doing a test drive after our transmission cooler install. So you can see right now, getting on the freeway, the trans is running 190. I've actually been very happy with this install because it looks like the main thing I've noticed is that the transmission takes longer to heat up and it cools down much faster than it did before. I won't say that it always operates at lower temperature, although I think it does. But I've noticed that the cooling aspect of it just is much faster. This was for $140 or whatever it was I spent at the dealer. It was entirely worth it. So we're gonna get on the freeway now and see if we can run the temp up. And I've got some weight in the bed. I've got my brake system, my new brake calipers and rotors are all back there. Bunch of steel targets and stuff. I've got a few hundred pounds in the bed. So we're gonna put some stress on this sucker now and see how long it takes to heat up and how fast it cools down. So there we go, 194. And the outside air is a little bit cooler too, so that might be keeping temperature down a degree or two from back in July when I was running this thing up the mountains and it was 90 degrees out. It's not in the 90s anymore, it's 70 degrees outside now. The weather in Washington State has changed. So we are running 197 at just a hair under 90 miles an hour. 199. There's 201. Keeping a pretty steady 90. Oh, Mr. Beamer, you should stay in the slow lane, bud. 203. Fast lane squatters, man, there ought to be a law against that. I know they have those signs up, you know, if you're not passing, stay to the right. People don't listen to that. Of course, I don't have to stay to the right because I'm always passing. I pass everybody I see. Anywho, 203, come on. Get it back up. This is a drastic improvement. 203 degrees. Now my speed's gonna have to be down a little bit because we got a bunch of pokey Joes here. Left lane squatters. Stay in your own damn lane, pokey. So we're still running just about 90 miles an hour, 203 degrees. Let's give it a little gas. There's 95. And that is 100 miles an hour right there. 203 degrees. Slowing down. Gotta love this mod. $140 and my transmission temps are way down from what they used to be. Highly recommend buying the Saudi cooler.